He drives the metaphorical pace car when it comes to Fox's coverage of motorsports. He is the great Pete Richards, senior coordinating producer with FS1, of course, working a lot with the NHRA. But we're going to dive into his career, learn more about the way in which he's been able to sort his way through the business, navigate it, but also learn more about him as a family man and a father and the human side as well. We sort of get the well-rounded look, if you will, of really an inspirational figure in the world of sports media. I'm Bryan Fenley with Fox Sports Radio, on Twitter at Bryan Fenley, and this is the On to Something podcast. All right, so Pete, I understand that you've got a ton of skill when it comes to understanding everything that goes into broadcasting motorsports, but you also have skill when it comes to playing tennis. And that might supersede what you do in motorsports. How would you compare your skill sets in tennis playing and motorsports broadcasting?
Well, anyone that has played tennis with me and sees this will know that I'm a back of the pack sort of guy. And my family, actually, I'm married. I've got a son and a daughter. And the girls in our family are the real tennis players. They are really the excellent players. My daughter plays on her club team at the University of North Carolina, Wilmington. My wife's been in the States a million times. I'm pretty decent for what I am, which is a guy who, doesn't get around that well and only plays so often. But I really enjoy tennis. I've been lucky enough to be on some teams that have done some great things. But it's my mental release. It's my physical break. It's what I love to do. But yeah, I think I'm better at making TV shows than I am playing tennis, if I got to be honest with you.
What about your tactics on the tennis court? What sort of player are you?
Well, first of all, rule number one, don't get hurt. Rule number two, no diving in the first or second set. In theory, my game is try and let your opponent make the mistake, because I'm the way tennis players are rated. There's a numerical rating system. I'm sort of in the lower to middle range. So at my level, if you can let the other guy make the mistake, you're going to win more often than not. That's easier said than done. Sometimes I get a little too overconfident, but I like playing. I've got a pretty good serve game. I've got a pretty good forehand, but the rest of it is a work in progress, we'll say.
There's not a whole lot of working in progress when it comes to your broadcasting capabilities. You've done so much, you've proven so much talent. And it all got started, if I'm not mistaken, Pete, you and your dad, when you were a youngster, would go to Indy 500. And I want to go back to the young version of Pete. And here you are looking at the pomp and circumstance and everything that's happening during such a prestigious event. And I'm wondering what's pacing through your mind at that young age about taking all of that in.
Well, you're right. And my dad was always a big race fan. I grew up in the state of Indiana near Chicago. And every year we would have, it's for people my age that grew up, you would have the Indy 500 on the radio as you're doing your Memorial Day barbecue. And one year, I think I was 12 or 13 years old, my dad's like, we're going to the 500. And I was very excited. This was 1980. And we went and we had seats in the upper level. And it's just, there's no way to explain it to something you've barely seen on television and read about. And I was the type of kid that I would go to the library and check out books on the Indy 500 and other racing events. But the first time we went, I got to tell you, it was a life-changing experience. And the color and the pageantry and the bands and the balloons. And then when the race starts and 33 cars come by at 200 miles an hour, to a little kid, it's just, this is the coolest thing I've ever seen in my life. And I didn't make that decision at that point, but I was like, if I could figure out a way to make my living in motorsports, I'd be a pretty happy guy. And luckily enough, it's worked out that way so far.
Pete Richards is with me. I'm Bryan Fenley. If you were that little kid and you would be able to, let's just say, in this alternative universe where you could tell yourself at that age that you would be where you are today, in the child version of yourself knew that, you talk about how surprised and how excited and how full of glee you were watching those cars zoom around at over 200 miles per hour. But then if you told yourself what you would be doing in your life at that young age, then what would your reaction have been?
I would have been, the emoji with your mind is blown.
Yeah.
That would have been me. I could never have imagined that it would have worked out the way it has. And I've been fortunate enough I've been with Fox Sports and Speed for almost 20 years now. Before that, I worked for production companies and local TV stations, and I've always had my hands in motorsports. And the ironic thing is, the thing that got me started, the Indy 500 and Indy style racing, that's the one series that I really have never worked on. But I've done just about everything else when it comes to motorsports, from NASCAR. Now I'm working on NHRA. I've done Superbikes. I've done MotoGP. I've done World of Outlaws. I've done monster trucks. I've done Supercross and motocross. I've produced and had a hand in the production with a lot of different things, but never Indy cars. And I think that's probably good for me, because it kind of keeps my early passion away from my vocation. You know what I'm saying? I think it's a thing. If you get too close to something, it might spoil the magic for you. And even now, I have an open weekend on my calendar, and I'm scheming right now. I'm like, all right, I got to figure out a way to get to Indy and go to the 500. Just it's the one thing I'll go to as a fan. I love it. It's something else, and it set me on a path that has kind of led me here.
In terms of being a fan, and certainly having the ability to work in something that you have so much passion in, that idea of turning something as a kid in a spark and then living this out in a business that can be competitive, how were you able to foster that passion and be persistent, knowing what you wanted to do, but then, Pete, to see it through? A lot of people have dreams. Not a lot of people are, unfortunately, able to execute on them. But what was it about your mentality that enabled you to take a childhood dream and actually put it into action?
Bryan, it's weird, because everyone that I know that has reached a certain level in their career, you have to love it, right? And you have to have a mentality that you're going to succeed no matter what. Now, on the other hand of that is, there's two key ingredients. You have to have people that see your passion and help foster that and help bring you along and help nudge you in certain directions. And you have to have some luck too. You have to be in the right position that when opportunities present themselves, you're able to take advantage. I mean, I think back to the first thing I ever did from broadcasting. I graduated from college. I was a telecom major. I knew I wanted to work in TV. I had no idea how to do it. I was a talent, for lack of a better word. I announced high school basketball and football games. I became a minor league hockey announcer. And then it sort of became clear to me that maybe behind the scenes is a little bit of the way that I should go. So I got a job at a TV station. I was a production assistant. The sports producer left and went on to do something else. So the sports director finds me in a stairway. He's like, "Hey, I understand you want to get into production, and we have an opening. I think you'd be great at it." So I did that for a couple of years, and then I find out about a job in Charlotte to produce a national weekly racing magazine show. And I came down. Growing up in Indiana, spring doesn't really start till May. This was the middle of March. I get an interview down here. I fly down. I meet with a couple of people. The weather's perfect. I'm like, oh my God, this place is awesome. I get the job. I'm like, Charlotte, we'll give it a couple of years. We'll see how it goes. I've been here 25 years now. And it's just a matter of being in the right place at the right time, never taking your eye off the ball, and realizing what you want to do. The other thing, I didn't really have a plan. I wasn't like, boy, I want to be doing this by the time I'm 30, or I want to be doing this by the time I'm 35. It's just, you take everything as it comes, you give it your all, and you just kind of see where you end up. And it's kind of nice when you look back and kind of think about your path and how you got there. And sometimes you're like, who's luckier than me? It's like, I've been in a lot of good positions, and I've been able to do a lot of things and work with some great people. And it's just, I saw a quote the other day. It's like, if you love what you do and you love the people you work with, you never work for one single minute. And the way I like to look at my career and the way things have gone, that's so true.
You said never that you took your eye off the ball. You've never taken your eye off the puck. I want to go back to the minor league broadcasting hockey. What would a traditional call, courtesy of Pete Richards,
Oh my
sound
gosh.
like back then? What would a
Oh,
goal
Brian.
score sound like?
Oh, he shoots and scores. I mean, I'm the kind of guy that I borrowed heavily from the people I listened to when I grew up. So this was in the early 90s, the old International Hockey League. Um, I lived in Indianapolis. They had a team called the Ice. They were a farm team of the Chicago Blackhawks. And it started, believe it or not, I was doing stats on the side for this high school football package. And the guy who was the play-by-play announcer, a guy named Jim Barber, got hired to do hockey. Well, he didn't know anything about hockey, but he knew I did. I played hockey when I was a kid. I loved the game. I followed it religiously. He's like, what would you think about coming and joining me on these broadcasts and being a color analyst? I'm like, I've never played beyond the recreational level. He's like, it doesn't matter. Just come in, say what you see, say what you know, and just kind of help me along. Well, it turns out that he got some other opportunities, and all of a sudden I'm doing play-by-play for games at the age of, 23, 24 years old. I didn't know what I was doing. I made $100 a game, and it was the best job I ever had. And I think if I had been able to continue that, that would have been awesome, because I still love the game, and it's something else. It sort of led me to get on the behind the scenes in the producing side of things, but I wouldn't trade those days for anything. That was great.
When was the last time, Pete, you listened to one of those broadcasts?
Oh, one of my own broadcasts.
Mhm.
Oh God, I couldn't tell you. Long time. I mean, I was when my father passed away. We were cleaning out his house, and I found a box of tapes. This was 7 or 8 years ago, and I found like a tape that I had. You record yourself back then. To do a replay, you're basically recording the whole time, and you literally take a tape player and you back it up and you play it. So I found a couple of old tapes, and my daughter, who's also a big hockey fan, she wanted to hear some of it. So I played it for her, and she was like, wow, that was really kind of cool. So I guess it was.
When you have children that love what you do from a job standpoint, how does that, Pete, validate what you do even more?
Wow, that is a great question. So my son is he's the oldest, and he's in his mid-20s. He is a content creator for a marketing company, and he got from me, I would hope, a love of writing, and he likes to write and he likes to create. My little one is 20. She's a sophomore at UNCW, and she wants to be a film major, and she is all about making movies and shooting things and interviewing people, and to see that she's so into it. Last year, she was on a break from school, and the NHRA race was in Charlotte, and we got her a credential, and she was down there with her camera. And as I said before we started recording, I'm a little afraid of the noise and the everything being at the start line of the drag race. It's something else. So I look on our monitor, and her thing is she wears a yellow hat. She calls her little company like Yellow Hat Productions. And there's Kate and her little yellow hat, literally right between two cars, 22,000 horsepower, and she's right in there getting the shot. So the fact that she wants to do sort of what I do, and my son is also in a related field, it's very gratifying.
How do you draw the line, Pete, between loving that they're going somewhat in the direction your career is going and letting them figure it out themselves, but also at the same time showing them how you made it and giving them some guidance along the way?
I think what I did for both my kids, actually, the one, if there's one drawback of this line of work and this career, is you're away from home a lot. I mean, my typical week, this is a typical week for me. I'm home and in the office, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, I travel to where the event is. Friday, Saturday, Sunday, you're working on the road, come back Monday. So I'm gone a lot. So what I always try to do with my kids a couple times a year, my son is 7.5 years older than my daughter. So with him first, and then when my daughter got older, a couple times a year, they would come out with me on the road, and they would see how it is, and they see the fun stuff, like, hey, we're going to go to California, and we're going to go to Disneyland or Universal, and then we're going to go for a hike, and we're going to go for a nice dinner, and we'll go to Santa Monica Pier and get some ice cream. But they also see you have 8 o'clock crew calls, and you have long hours of setup and rehearsal and just the process of how it's fun, but it's also a lot of work. And I think if I could pass one thing along to my kids is a work ethic that you 90% of success is just showing up, but man, that other 10%, you have to get in there and you have to bust your butt and you have to be willing to work as hard as you can. And I just think the example that you said, rather than telling them, seeing it, you know what I'm saying? My son came over, it was Mother's Day on Sunday. I'm producing the show this Sunday for NHRA, and we're all hanging out and I'm at the table working on graphics for this weekend and working on a format. And I think they see that this type of work is not a 9-to-5 job and you're always sort of working on it. I have so many great people that I work with in this current situation with NHRA, but we are constantly, I mean, we joke a little bit, but I think it's true. 365 days a year, you're talking to your coworkers, you're talking to people, you're throwing ideas back and forth. You're watching a lot of other things on TV. I don't know how many times I'm watching something else. I'm watching a football game. I'm watching a hockey game. And our play-by-play guy for NHRA is a guy named Bryan Fenley, and he's very talented. But I'll be like, hey, did you see how we were talking the other day? As a matter of fact, the Kentucky Derby was going on and how the horse racing guy called the finish of the Kentucky Derby. What does that have to do with drag racing? Well, nothing, except you're in a race. You have to let your voice build the excitement. You have to be able to tell the story. You have to say just enough, but not too much. And I think it's just people that have the passion for it and have the desire for it. They're like-minded. And even on Christmas Day, I could be watching a football game on Christmas Day, and I'll text one of the other producers or my cohort with NHRA, Steve Reinches, who's their head of TV. Just, hey man, I saw something cool. We should give that a shot. And you're just always working on it all the time.
So when does Pete Richards' mind turn off for a little bit?
To be honest with you, not very often. I don't sleep great because I think a lot of times I'll think of something, like this morning I was like, I was wanting to, everybody has a routine and a race week and you send this out on Monday and this out on Tuesday. And I woke up and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I got to get the graphic list to the graphics people. I got to get this out. I got to do this. I got to finalize the format. I got to check on the programming schedule because my day job, the main part of my job as a coordinating producer for Fox Sports is coordinating the network. So so this week coming up, our race is in Richmond, Virginia. There's a NASCAR race in Kansas City that precedes us. If that NASCAR race runs long, then that affects what happens with our show. So we have to have a plan in place. If that race runs long, then we either will slide, for example, that we'll just delay the start of our events, or we'll start on a different network and have to move. So there's a lot of moving pieces. So there's always something to think about. But to answer your question, when do I relax? When do I turn my brain off? When I'm playing tennis, when I'm flying, I tend to I'll try not to work too much. I'll watch a show or just some mindless thing. I'm a big sports fan, so I'll put a Cubs game on, hockey game, tennis match, whatever. I try and relax, but I think you're always kind of on the back of your mind thinking about stuff.
Yeah, it comes with the territory. How many miles have you flown
in my life? Oh my gosh. I would say I'm probably close to 2 million. I was with one airline for a long time. It was based here in Charlotte. And then I had made their 1,000,000 mile. And then for a variety of reasons, I switched to a different airline that requires me to fly through Atlanta a lot. And I'm probably 120, 150,000 miles a year. But it may seem extreme. Like if I'm talking to my mom and I'm explaining, oh, well, I got to fly here, I got to fly there, and I'm doing this. To me, it's no different than I'm going to get in my car and drive to the office, or I'm going to go to the store. It's very routine. It's what you do, right? It's part of the job. It's what you have to do. So you do it. So you learn to love it. That's it.
He loves it. He's a jet setter, a trend setter.
I don't know about that.
And someone who is doing so much great work. Pete Richards with Fox Sports, senior coordinating producer. This has been so much fun, Pete. I really enjoyed the conversation where we got to learn a little bit about what it's like behind the scenes personally and
Yeah.
professionally, which is what I
Yeah.
love about these conversations, getting the human element out and letting people realize that there's so many hardworking people in the business that don't get a lot of love, deserve more, and have the potential and power to inspire others, which I think is what we did here. Pete Richards, I'm Bryan Fenley. Pete, thank you so very much for
Thank
making
you.
the time.
Thank you, Bryan. This has been so great. I appreciate the time. I really do. This has been fun. Thank you.